Okay, so I'm gonna get back on my soapbox here about the local informants that think they're a bunch of patriots that probably inform for not only the local police, but falsely, but they do work for INFRAGARD, or like I said, they're in a fraternal lodge of some sort, the Elks, the Moose, Freemasons, the college fraternity. I mean, they're all connected, but the basis is INFRAGARD. And what INFRAGARD is, all you got to do is go onto their site. If you're getting messed with, let me tell you how easy it is for you to get put on their list, and they work directly under the FBI. So the FBI sends it up to DHS and the fusion centers, and the INFRAGARD sends it down to local and state police, all right, and their security guards and all this. Listen to all the places that INFRAGARD is supposed to be protecting, and all it is an intelligence sharing community. You're snitching, okay? I've had people walk around me that say rats get bats. Them motherfuckers were running so much dope it would kill half a town, okay? So I don't want to hear this shit. And then they'll turn around and make everybody think you're whatever the fuck. But these are the facilities that INFRAGARD shares intelligence with, okay? Any chemical business, any commercial facility, any business really, an integral infrastructure, something necessary, chemical, commercial, communications, critical manufacturing, dams, defense industrial bases, emergency services, energy companies like gas, water, electric, solar, financial services, so that's any financial institution, anything to do with food and agriculture, grocery stores, any government facility, even your local DES, that's a government facility. Your post office, that's a government facility, okay? Public health care, information technology, if they think you're a hacker, any nuclear material waste or reactor, transit systems, and water and wastewater systems. Okay, well, I can tell you right now, just in my case, I knew somebody in communications that owns a communications business that was pulling my fucking leg. Okay, we lived near a dam, so that right there, anybody can tell one of the park rangers going to go to INFRAGARD, or he's an INFRAGARD informant. Boom, just like that. I had the gas company, people that worked in the gas company fucking with me at the gym, you know, making loud punching noises and doing innuendo speech. Government facilities, I had someone that claimed to be a former veteran working at the DES, supposed to help you get a job. He's like 20-30 minutes late for the appointment. His long lunch is far more important than helping someone in the community get reestablished with a job. And then information technology, I mean, I didn't mess with anybody out there like that. I didn't hack anybody. Don't know how, but I was in the information technology world, and that's all they got to know, and that's all they got to say. Transit systems, I had someone who's very clearly still in the biz, or was in the biz as a young man, definitely running things, give me the business and try to fucking tell me he's not going to give me a fucking ride and just leave me hanging in the middle of the fucking park in the desert when it's 100 degrees. And then water and waste systems. I mean, we live by a lake and a river. So that's what they do. They're informants, or they're employees, but probably their informant or a business owner that's also an employee of INFRAGARD. There is no drug testing. There is no physical standards, no physical training, and no physical testing mentioned on their site. I am not an INFRAGARD employee, but I'm just telling you what's on their site. No drug testing, no physical standards, no physical training is required. They do physical security and cyber security training. You have to do a Privacy Act statement. The FBI does your background check. You have to do a non-disclosure agreement. You have to do a security risk assessment and do reconfirmations of security assessments. You have to, sign confidentiality forms and all that. Over 18, U.S. or naturalized citizen. You have to inform the FBI and INFRAGARD and keep them up to date of any pending criminal activity or matters. pending criminal matters, excuse me. Okay? And you just have to be affiliated with a critical infrastructure like I listed. So anybody at basically any business, any government facility, any communications business, okay, any of that stuff, they can just run and tell and say that person's a problem, but what they're really doing is they know that you're a threat to them because they're up to no fucking good. And since they've been established in the town about as long as you've been alive, or at least 15, 20 years or even 10 years, and you're not looking so hot because they run the area, and it's just intelligence sharing. You're a snitch. These are all people that can't get into the FBI, that can't get into the police force, that can't get into the sheriff's department. No physical training, testing, or standards. It says nothing about drug testing. Okay? They do cybersecurity training and physical security training, just according to their website. But they're basically any critical infrastructure. So anything in town, really. That's if you're a targeted individual and you're pretty law-abiding. Maybe you have a couple beers and you drive home, or maybe you smoke a little wacky tobacco when you're not supposed to, or whatever. All these people have to do is say you're dangerous, and bam, because they're an informant for InfraGard, which means they can't even get into InfraGard. Think about that. InfraGard's people that cannot be a cop, cannot be a sheriff's deputy, cannot be an agent in the FBI, cannot work for DHS, cannot work for Fusion Center. And then they're informants. So just imagine how dirty that world gets. If you've got all that corruption that we have in our actual local, state, and federal government, you see all the corruption that exists in that world, in those worlds, and they have to do even more background checks and more drug testing and have physical standards and weapons training, so on and so on and so on. You see all the corruption that goes on in there. Just imagine what happens in agencies like InfraGard and the private sector, which they also work with. So that's how quickly you become a target. Someone is an informant or an employee of InfraGard, and bam, that's it. That person's dangerous, and what they're really saying is that person's going to get me lit up because I extorted them out of a fucking vehicle, or out of a job, or out of their home, or all three, or they're a disabled individual and I did all three, and I made sure they were homeless, and I financially and emotionally and physically abused them. I'm just off the top of my head coming up with examples. But that's what it is. That's what InfraGard's about. That's who they work with. Basically, any business in your town considered critical infrastructure. That's anything. Any place that sells food, any kind of energy service, and their informant, or them as an employee, or them as an employee of one of these critical infrastructures, and they work for InfraGard, dude, you know how dirty those connections are? So if you're being messed with in your apartment complex, in your neighborhood, by the street sweepers, by the trash workers, by the convenience store workers, by the locals, that's why. Because they're snitches, or they work for InfraGard and a company in town. So, as I've said, this is the civilian police force. This is the Stasi. The Germans had, what did they say, 1 in 60? Every third person was a snitch during the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in East Germany, and anywhere else that the Stasi were doing their business. And that's where we're at in America. InfraGard's been around since 1996. Who was the president in 1996? At the end of his first or beginning of his second term. So that's who started this. That's who signed this up. And then, of course, Mueller. That guy was all about it. Isn't that the director of the FBI that got fired for allowing complete and total violations of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution several thousand times, to the point where they just got him to say, I don't remember how many times I allowed warrantless searches and seizures of civilians' homes. That's what this is. Okay, so one more time, there's no drug testing mentioned, there's no physical standards or testing mentioned, just cybersecurity, physical security. They get an FBI background check, but you have to keep the FBI informed and up to date of any pending criminal matters. Criminal matters! So you can be a criminal in InfraGard and then just imagine what their informants are up to. And they could have a civilian job that they could connect InfraGard with. I mean, you're literally dealing with the secret police in America. So that explains why somebody that doesn't do anything but leave their house 3 or 4 times a day for a 10-minute walk with their dog, orders their groceries in, and goes to the gym every other day within the complex. That's how someone like myself and anybody else like that is getting messed with. Or if you're a delivery driver, or in your job, if you're getting workplace harassment, that's why. Because that's all they have. That's how dirty it is. These people, like I said, imagine the corruption that exists in InfraGard and below, and the private sector security companies that they work with. They have half, if not less, of the requirements of local, state, and federal and law enforcement jobs. Look it up for yourself, but there it is.